Lakes Observing System and the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. Hi, I'm Rebecca Pearson, GLOS's Program Manager. And I just wanted to say a few words about what GLOS is. GLOS was established to support data collection, data management, and data sharing in the Great Lakes. So with that in mind, with me are my colleagues who will be doing the bulk of the talking from the GLOS standpoint of view, and that's John Bratton and Tad Selecki. And they serve GLOS's data management team, which is a group of technical folks working to provide the services that we do at GLOS. And they can say a few words, and then after that, Scott from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative will introduce himself. John?
Yeah, hi, I'm John Bratton. I'm located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Work for Limnotech. We work across the Great Lakes, actually across the country, on a variety of different environmental issues, everything from contamination and fisheries to water quality and other sorts of issues. So in this case, we're talking specifically about data and the role that data can play in improving people's lives that live on and around the Great Lakes.
Hi, I'm Tad Selecki. I'm the leader of the DMAC team, and DMAC is DMAC, the Data Management and Communications Team for the Great Lakes Observing System. And my role is to serve up data and help people turn it into information.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. I'm based in Montreal, Quebec, and I am not a data specialist, but I am a specialist in water and environmental issues, working for the Great Lakes. The Cities Initiative is an NGO that has 132 member cities binationally, so both in the US and in Canada, Ontario and Quebec. And so what we will be doing in this challenge will be mostly putting team members in contact with resources from our member cities. So thank you for being here.
So this is John Bratton. Let me start off here by just describing the need, and I assume that people that are involved in this challenge have some of their own needs that are maybe priorities to them over others. So I encourage you to go with something that you think may be first useful to you and then maybe to other people as well. So people are vulnerable to changing weather and hydrological conditions on the Great Lakes, and they include a variety of things such as spring flooding or flooding at other times of years, ice shoves, especially in the springtime, lake effect snow over the winter, and rising water levels. And we'll give you some illustrations of some of these phenomena in action. So here's a little video of an ice shove on Lake Ontario.
The West, we've got 80s, 90s, and 100s today. On part of the country, we've got these cold wind chills, 20s, 30s, and 40s. And because this cold air has been sitting right here around the Great Lakes, temperatures like this that feel like this, the ice hasn't had a chance to melt. So that ice, now picked up by winds in this pattern, is blowing on shore, and that's a problem for the folks on shore. Our Ginger Z is in Lake Mille Lacs, Minnesota, to show you what a problem that is. Good morning, Ginger.
Sam, this is wild. Look behind me. What looks like heaps of snow is not. It's actually ice, shards of ice. This is what happened when the ice started attacking. Come with me into this boathouse. It punctured right through the walls and into this and a dozen other structures.
Mickey, it's really pushing in.
It is a colossal blob of ice coming right toward Darwood Johnson's cottage. all she could do was hit record.
Michael, get away from it.
In less than 10 minutes, the ice that sounded like breaking glass broke glass in these homes, smashing right through the walls.
It just busted through our door over here.
The ice was pushed ashore by strong winds. Now look at the terrifying wave from above. At times, it climbed to 3 feet deep.
It's going right through the house.
It's called an ice heave, and it happened in Manitoba, Canada this weekend too, where an incredible tsunami-like wave of ice destroyed a dozen two-story homes.
Bang, the ice came right through the living room there. He said, grab it first, grab whatever you can, get the keys. We got to get out of here.
So you can see right back there, that is the lake, and all of that thin ice was pushed right up with those strong winds onto the shore. Now their ice out, or when it melts, was about 2 to 3 weeks late, and that had a lot to do with why this happened.
Right, next situation is coastal flooding related to high water levels to begin with the strong storm waves on top of those. That last one was actually Minnesota. This is Lake Ontario.
Well, it had calmed down a little bit, but as you can see, with white caps literally right at your faces. Look at that, right outside our bank, you got white caps at this wave just smashing. Look at this one about to. It's crazy. Look at these white caps because of the height of the water, just all across the back. There's the water going down, there's the wind going down. So anyway, we're hanging on here. Got all the water cleaned up inside, but it went okay. Somehow we can keep it up. It's just keep breaking below the break wall and only splash me, I'm okay. Thankfully they haven't made it over the top of the break wall yet. So, but I'm good.
Right, the other example we want to mention here, and you could probably think of others, but this is lake effect snow. It happens when you've got cold weather conditions, but lakes are not frozen over yet, or not completely frozen over. So as the wind blows over the lakes, they pick up moisture and dump large amounts of snow, particularly in the areas just downwind of the lakes. And that downwind direction can shift as the wind shifts. But here's an example from Buffalo from 2017, what the roadways look like during major lake effect snow events during commute time in Buffalo. So the challenge here is that the data on these phenomena are available. You can watch them on the news. The wind directions and some of the related aspects could be forecast, but the data are not always well formatted. Information may be sparse. You could have spectacular images that still aren't that useful because you don't know exactly where they are, how widespread this phenomenon is, especially more localized things like ice shrubs or particular roadways that are affected by lake effect snow buildup. The question is, can we inform decisions by determining such things as how likely is it that my coastal town flood under certain conditions, or how big will the waves be, how big will the snow drifts be, how deep will the snow be? I think Scott's going to talk about end user free.
Yes. Yes. So from an end user perspective, it's very important to get one, timely information, but also information that is reliable. And must take quick decisions. They must mobilize important resource. They must also make some decisions on to make sure the citizens in the city will be secure. So that that includes all sorts of end users. There's a few that are mentioned here, but at the end of the day,
so first is International Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Board. This is hosted by the International Joint Commission, has a lot of information on the combined water level management program that exists between the US and Canada for those water bodies. Next slide. Great Lakes Coastal Flood Study. Also some results related to coastal floods with lake-wide information and then also lake-specific information. Basin-wide, I meant on the last one. Federal Emergency Management Agency in the US does floodplain mapping, both for rivers and for lakes. They're in the process of updating a lot of the Great Lakes maps, so that gives you some sense of how far from the lake shore you're likely to experience flooding during a storm event. Conservation Ontario floodplain mapping is somewhat of a counterpart to FEMA on the Canadian side of the border. And then the NOAA Lake Level Viewer is a tool that can be used to simulate both higher lake levels and lower lake levels, with the understanding that lake levels fluctuate based on climatic conditions in any year or string of years. And here's the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory Hydroclimate Dashboard, which shows data, both historical data and forecast data for lake levels. You can compare lakes to each other or look at an individual lake, both in the past and going forward in the future. And then the Numerical Environmental Prediction Program for the St. Lawrence here uses numerical modeling to simulate the evolution and the physical, biological, chemical processes in the St. Lawrence in its watershed. Supports public safety, both for high flow and low flow periods. Low flow, there's a risk of vessel groundings, et cetera. So both extremes are an issue. And then also search and rescue in the event of some sort of an accident on the water. And last one here is the Chaudière River monitoring system. It has cameras, limnometric scales and level probes, and it transmits information via the web and email to municipal authorities for responding to emergency measures. A couple of benefits: it harmonizes the flood emergency management, improves response time, also facilitates communication between stakeholders and folks who live along the river.
So this is Tad again. So we've looked at some of the partnerships very quickly, some of the initiatives that are already ongoing where people get data together and try and make it available, hopefully in a sense that makes it useful, turns it into information. I want to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are out there that complement these different partnerships and the like. And we'll talk at length, well, at very short length, about GLOS, about the Great Lakes Observing System and some of the things that are done there. But we want to note that there are all sorts of things going on, like a mobile-friendly applications. GLOS has one, Great Lakes Buoys, Great Lakes Buoy Portal at glbuoys.glos.us. You'll see a screenshot from that. We take inspiration, though, from things like Waze and weather.com and wonder if there are aspects of that technology which can be used to make the data more useful. As far as other kinds of data, there are models. GLOS works very closely with NOAA and its Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab to disseminate the data from forecasting models for ice and water conditions, and of course the National Weather Service and complementary agencies in Canada make weather data available. There are water level gauges all across the Great Lakes and in the tributaries that are available through different authorities and the U.S. Geological Survey and the flood maps from FEMA. So all these different things come into play when we talk about technologies that might be useful. So I want to talk a little bit specifically about GLOS Data and talk about how it manages the data. It's about finding out what data are there. So I'm going to show you the buoy pages and the data portal page. We also make data available through web services, so that if you have an automatic program that wants to harvest data and use it and let people know what's going on, that's very feasible. And there's another thing called Boaters, the Boaters View. And again, I'm just going to show you screenshots. You have links here. You're invited to go and look at these, please, and let us know if they're useful, if you have questions. But so, for example, the buoy portal is a mobile-friendly web page that lets you see where data are available in the Great Lakes. This is a snapshot from October. There's a map view and a quick tabular view, and then you can click through and see more about each buoy in turn. The data portal provides access to a giant catalog of metadata, and metadata is data about data, which is searchable so that you can identify what kinds of data are out there. And then there's also links to a map view and other tools so that you can access the data. We also encourage the use of data through services. I mentioned the services before. There's something called Threads. Threads data server provides access to data that's stored in a very common scientific format called netcdf. There were two links under that particular point, and the second link is to a wiki entry on GitHub, which describes in detail how you might use Threads to find a particular asset or to track down a particular data set that you might have discovered through the data portal or the Great Lakes Buoys portal. If you find that there's a particular buoy that's of interest, you can go to this page for a recipe on how to get to the data itself. We talked about the models. If you're interested in the results from a particular forecast model at a particular point in time, there's a point query tool which lets you go to a point in space and time and pull out information from the model or a time series of data from that model that you can look at and do something interesting with. There's something called SOS. I'm not going to get into details overall, but I will mention that GLOS is built on an open source technology stack and relies on standardized web services, including the sensor observation service, and the buoy data is also available through an OGC SOS portal. And then finally, what you can do when you pull together data you find in the catalog and access through services, you can do things like this. This is a tool that is built at GLOS. And in this particular case, you're looking at Lake Michigan. I should have shown Lake Ontario, I'm sorry. It's showing locations of marinas and boat launches, and also for your interest, one of the model results for currents. So just to recap really quickly, there's a buoy portal, there's a data portal, there's a thread server, there's an SOS server, there's a point query tool, and a boater's view are some of the products and tools that are available. Please refer again to those links. And what we hope that you might do with them, I'll speak to the first 2 points, just kind of reiterating that initial observation. There's a lot of data out there that's real-time measured at buoys. Many of them are not in the water quite yet. They'll be going into the water soon, and forecasted through models. And it would be neat to see more of that data placed into people's hands in in a immediately digestible and useful format. I showed you that threads access. It's very complete, and you can get anything you want out of there, but it takes some work, and there might be something that is interesting, either pulling out a particular buoy or model result and making it instantly available to people who would care about it, or even better, some synthesis of different things similar to that. And there is just this concern that there's a lack of decision support tools for coastal planners, things like real-time flood mapping to give people an idea of what to worry about now, or on a planning basis to try and better identify what the hotspots are for flooding. And then for the last point, I was going to ask Scott to speak a little bit more to, excuse me, to the importance of communication. So Scott, are you available?
Yes, just wanted to underline the fact that coordination of communications, before and during an extreme weather event is of paramount importance, and that when an extreme weather event happens, there's not much you can do about the event itself, but you can, if you are prepared and if you have a resilient community, then you can reduce dramatically the risk of that event. And the inverse, if you are not prepared, if you do not have good communication and good coordination, well, then the risk to the public and the risk to the environment and to infrastructures will be much greater with the same event. That's it for me.
Great. This is Becky again, and I want to thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope you're interested in thinking about a solution to our challenge. If you have any questions, here's all our contact info. We're happy to answer anything right now after the presentation, or even later as you come up with your own ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tad and John and Scott and Becky. That was really, really wonderful. If anyone has any questions right now, we'll just wait a few minutes and you can pop them right into the chat. And just while we're waiting for any of those, I just wanted to highlight that if you have not yet registered for the AquaHacking challenge to take part, even if you don't know what specific challenge you're going to do, which one of the 4, I would say as soon as you can register, then you can be looped into all of our updates, all of the information. You'll get the update of when this webinar is posted. So I'll be sharing this specific link to sign up in the chat. But it's basically, if you just go to aquahacking.com, then you can register for the challenge this year right there. Once you register, you'll be able to form a team. So if you have any questions generally about participating in AquaHacking, then you can reach out via email through the contact information on that website. And it doesn't look like we have any questions from participants right now. I'm just looking in the chat. So I am going to wrap this up officially and say just again a huge thank you. Tad and John, Becky and Scott have done a lot of hard work to put together not just this presentation and this webinar, but this entire challenge. And they will be working with a few other experts to support all of the teams, all of the participants who take on this challenge throughout the entire working process between now and the semifinals in June. So if you do want to go ahead with this challenge, I would say absolutely register. We can get connected with you and answer any questions. And yeah, In the meantime, thank you so much for taking the time to join the webinar, and we're excited to start working with you. Any final comments, Becky, Tad, or John, on your end, or Scott?
No, I'm good.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you again, everyone, and stay tuned. We'll be sharing the recording of this shortly. Thank you.